What up, no? Sorry for the delay. We have had technical difficulties, even though that is the new norm when you're talking about doing this stuff through the interwebs. But this is Wednesday, and you know what that means. This is another episode of Knockouts and Three Counts. But before we get to that with Cody the Codebreaker Linne talking about his fight for Anthony Pettis FC, fighting for that flyweight title, we got to tell you about our sponsors over at Potter's Tree Service. Potter's Tree Service are the people to go to if you need tree removal, tree trimming, chipping service, storm damage cleanup, walnut logging, lot clearing. All that stuff can be found at the website that's in the description. But hey, I can tell you what Potter's Tree Service can do, but why don't I just show you? So I'll check out this little commercial from our sponsors over here and get to the show. Peace.
This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Rock, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and Three Counts.
Cover! We got a new world champion! That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and Three Counts is the podcast, baby. It's the real deal, baby.
Knockouts and Three Counts starts now.
And just like that, we're back at it. This is Knockouts and Three Counts again. Sorry for the delay. My internet decided to take a shit right when I got to the studio. And since I got, one of those shoot jobs over at the post office, I was a little preoccupied. But without any further ado, we've got the return of our guy, Cody the Codebreaker Linne, before he steps into the cage for Anthony Pettis FC and tries to go get himself some more gold. So first of all, Cody, how the hell are you? Thanks for coming back to the show. How you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be back on for sure.
We're appreciative to have you back on. Shout out to Chris checking us out there in Massachusetts. If you guys are checking in, let us know where you're checking it out from. But, dude, you had quite the result in your last fight. You got quite the fight lined up for you now with Anthony Pettis FC, and you've got another past guest of the show in the co-main event right before you jump in there and Askar as well. So before we get to your next fight, tell me how you're feeling now that you're a little bit removed from your last fight, and were there any big takeaways you had from your last trip to the cage?
Yeah, obviously it went my way. It was a good win.
Hey, yo.
But yeah, the takeaways, I mean, I still learned a lot from the fight, even though it was 3 minutes. I always learn a lot from every fight. I think the biggest takeaway, honestly, is Dan was willing to come out and train, and like we got to talk a lot, sit down, and just talk in general about MMA and different things and train together. So I think out of the whole experience, that was probably one of the coolest things was fighting someone and be able to train with them. And we're both very humble, we both understand the sport. And I think that was a big thing because now he helps me even now, right, for this camp. So honestly, that all in all, it was a really cool experience.
Well, that's Corey, you're muted, by the way. But that said, that brings up something that we've been talking about a lot on the show as far as training goes. Let me ask you, in 2023, are you a guy who likes the method of training all your stuff in one spot, or are you a guy who likes to go hit multiple spots? Because like I've talked about on the show before, when I first started training, man, you didn't really have a lot of places that you could train everything all in one spot. And now you've got a lot of these super gyms that are up and things like that, but we're starting to see more. And ironically, with Askar, who we just talked about for his last fight, you know, he talked to us about, you know, leaving Factory X and kind of liking to get looks from a few different gyms. What about you? Are you doing everything at Rothwell, or are you kind of hitting the different bases for this camp?
Yeah, no, I do half my training at Rothwell and half my training at BFS now in Chicago. It's right by O'Hare, and then also have a boxing coach. Which he comes to the gym, but he owns his own gym too. So yeah, I try and get the best I can with what I have around me, right? And like Rothwell, VFS, my boxing coach, like it's all good work all around. It's really high level, high quality. So yeah, I try and venture out and find what's gonna help me become the best me I can be.
The one thing to spin back before I was muted and went to start to ask the question, but dumbass forgot to unmute myself. It's got to be such an advantage to your game if you bring up training with your past opponent. It's got to be such an advantage to your game if you guys are really honest.
Training with VF.
It's got to be such a big advantage, actually, like learning your strengths and weaknesses. If you guys are really honest with each other and where he feels as though you felt strong, whereas though he felt he had advantages in the fight and stuff, that's got to lead to a huge advantage in your direction to be able to actually hear that stuff and take it in and work on those particular aspects of your game.
Yeah, 100%. Like, obviously he's a high level pro, right? Like he was undefeated before then. Like he knows what he's doing. He's been in the game for a long time. So yeah, we talk and we like, oh, you're strong here, you're weak here, or this and that, and like we're honest with each other. You know, like nobody's trying to hide anything or be nice. You know, we're trying to be honest to improve each other. You know, and that's why I want to keep trying to bring guys in like that, especially like to Rocco and like have high level guys there all the time. You know. Because again at VFS I train half the time there, and like we already know there's guys UFC, Bellator, PFL, like all kinds of stuff. So I just want to make sure everywhere I go, there's always me high level training partners.
Was that your first experience, either training with somebody that you fought or training with somebody and then happening to fight them?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the first time I ever like fought someone and then actually trained them. Like I've talked to people before, like, oh, we should train together. That really happened. This is like the first time I actually fought someone, and then we actually ended up training like a month later.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, you always hear people talk about in fights, like, you know, you learn so much about the person you're in the cage with and gaining that respect from being in the cage with somebody. I mean, it's something that you're seeing a lot more of in 2023. And you talk about VFS. I mean, that's a gym that, if I'm not mistaken, they got Juliana Pena over there. They got Bilal Muhammad's over there. I mean, you talk about high level training. I mean, you don't really get too much higher level than that when you're talking about somebody like Juliana Pena, who was one of the ones to be able to dethrone Amanda Nunes, and Bilal Muhammad, who many people, myself included, either consider the uncrowned welterweight champion or the guy that's been shit next for quite a fucking while.
Yeah, he's coming for it. He's coming for it for sure.
I'm ready to see it. I want to see. I don't give a damn if it's him versus Colby. I don't care if it's him versus Leon Edwards, man. I just want to see this guy get a title shot. That's all I want to see.
He deserves it, man. He's been forever. He's beating everybody. You know, like give him the shot already.
I feel bad for him too, because it was like that last one was his title eliminator, and then because it took so long to book the actual title matchup that it feels like that fight was so long ago that it's like, does he now have to kind of fit in another one because of that, or is the promise still kept even though it's, you know, a year plus in advance now?
Yeah, they just need to give it to him, man. Like they keep skipping over him. Like, oh, this guy needs this guy. No, man, he's like beat everybody right now. Like, who else is it beat besides the champ? You know, like give him the belt, man.
I couldn't agree more, dude. That's pretty much, I mean, the only thing that's left for him at this point.
Yeah.
When they were calling for that Kamaru Usman fight with him, I was like, that'd be a good one. But with Kamaru potentially staying at 185 now, it changes the whole landscape of the division. So
Gonna have to see how this plays out, but that's another thing to talk about in and of itself. I mean, we talked a little bit about your last fight. You're stepping into this fight here now for Anthony Pettis FC. You're going to be fighting for the flyweight title. First of all, talk to me about getting to fight on a stage like APFC and it being in, your home spot out there in Milwaukee like that. I mean, you're going to be able to have a lot of your fans around and a big platform with them being on UFC Fight Pass. What are your thoughts headed into this fight and having such a high-profile fight after your last performance?
Yeah, no, I'm very grateful for it, right? Like, it's a big opportunity. Fight for APFC, like, they're growing. I mean, you see the names, the guests they're bringing in. Anthony Pettis is doing the right thing and giving everybody opportunities to really showcase themselves, right? He's giving the platform, you just got to perform, and that's my plan. But, like, I try not to get too much into, at least right now, get too much into this and that. He's gonna be there, they're gonna be there, there's gonna be all these people watching. I just gotta focus on what the task at hand is, and that's Dylan Cox, where I gotta defeat him. And then after, just like my last fight, like I was just focused on winning that fight against Dan Moriarty, and then I kind of like sat back and like, wow, like John Jones was there. I fought on UFC Fight Pass, I was the main event, kind of. Then I went back and looked at it, but I don't want to celebrate, so to speak, too early and like take this in now. I want to just focus on what I gotta do, and then after, okay, I did it. Now I can enjoy what actually happened.
Understandably so. And to your point with like the performing in front of John Jones and stuff, I remember us talking about that on the last one. I know not to spin your mental into that because, like you said, you don't want to focus on that and stuff, but it does help, to your point, bring in so many more eyeballs when all the posters and stuff and all that type of stuff all say, like, hey, we're going to have so-and-so on the commentary. We're going to have so-and-so do, like they're having a good list of names come in. So that should definitely help differentiate Anthony Pettis' his fight organization on the UFC Fight Pass.
Yeah, I think it's good too for everybody. Like, I can't just ignore it completely. Like, it's there, like the big stage, right? It's there, but it's like giving us that experience of fighting in front of all these high level guys, right? In front of this big crowd, so to speak, with everybody there. So it gives you that experience. So at least when you go, next step, UFC, Bellator, whatever it is, at least you have that experience of fighting in front of people that really know what's going on and their names matter, So I think it's good in that aspect too, because like it makes the crowd feel more legit, I guess, more like, okay, this is where I'm at. This is the level I'm on right now.
And it could really open some doors too if you're able to shake the right hands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just get in front of the right faces and have conversations with people. It can really help with a MMA career like yourself.
Well, let's talk about the business at hand first. Like he said, we don't want to count the chickens before they hatch.
Absolutely.
You've got a hell of a fight
with your mentality that way, but
yeah, he's got a hell of a fight coming up against Dylan Cox. Tell me, what are your thoughts on this fight? Looking into Dylan Cox. Dylan Cox is also on a 2-fight win streak as well with his. I mean, he's fought for CFFC, LFA. I mean, you're getting another guy just like yourself who's had high level competition, which is another, good person for you to have on your resume, not just as somebody to fight, but that you're in there with the top, you're in there with the top talent outside of the UFC and in the regional stage. What do you think about this fight with Dylan Cox?
I like it, like you're saying. I think it's that next step. It's a good test for me. He has that experience on the bigger stages, at least locally, and tougher opponents. Right, he has experience against them too. But yeah, for him, I feel like he's well rounded everywhere. There's a lot of guys that are just good at striking, just good at grappling. He's pretty good everywhere. His striking's good, his wrestling's good, his grappling's good. So I think actually, since he's good at all three, it's gonna give me the opportunity to show what I can do, full MMA, everything. So I really think like this fight's gonna take place on the feet, during the wrestling, and on the ground. I think you guys are gonna see all aspects, and it's gonna show where my level is right now.
With mentality wise, when you're going against somebody like that you consider well-rounded, what's your focus on that? Do you go in there expecting to use like your specialties, or like you say, do you try to kind of bring your more well-rounded game to somebody else's already well-rounded game?
Yeah, so in my eyes, it's like I feel confident in all these positions and all these situations, right? The striking, the wrestling, the grappling. So I'm not gonna force anything, Like I feel confident in my skills, so I'm just gonna let it play out. I'm not gonna say, oh, my striking is way better, I'm keeping on the feet, or my grappling is way better, I'm bringing to the ground. He's good everywhere too. I feel like my skill set is better, right? So I feel like I can use that in every aspect, and then wherever it goes, it goes. I'm not gonna try and force one thing, because when you start forcing things, it's not gonna work, right? So I'm just gonna flow, and then whatever happens in the fight.
So, with that said, do you expect in this fight to end in another finish for you, or do you think that this one's got the potential to go, the full 5 rounds and be a war for you since it's a title fight?
I always expect to finish. Honestly, out of myself, that's what I expect for myself. When I go in there, anytime you always think about the fight over and over and over every day as leading up. I never in my head have, oh, this is gonna be a decision. I always see myself or think about getting a finish. That's just my mentality. I don't like going to the judges, whether I dominate the 3 rounds, 5 rounds, or it's back and forth. I want to get the finish no matter what, right? So sure, any fight could go to decision, right? He's tough. There's very well go to decision, but in my head, in my eyes right now, I see me getting a finish.
And I mean, at this point, and it's a sad thing to say, and it's one thing, don't get me wrong. Obviously, with us having the pro wrestling background as well, everybody likes to see action. Everybody likes the car crash. Everybody likes the fights when somebody gets in there and you see rock'em sock'em robots. But let's face it, this is a business. You got to win these fights regardless, and that's got to be goal number one. But I would argue that in 2023, that it's, especially with what we're seeing with a lot of the people that are getting into the UFC coming from Dana White's Contender Series.
Nope. Some of them internet issues biting back.
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know. Internet's still acting up. But to finish what I was trying to say, you see in 2023, you hear it talked about during the Contender Series every week, that finishes and being impressive in these fights is almost as important as winning them. Because I can't tell you how many people like our guy, past guest of the show, Kenny Cross. The guy made weight twice in 2 weeks, beats the guy in his Contender Series fight, and then the same guy gets another shot down the season, and he ends up getting into the UFC. So being exciting is almost as important as getting these wins. So it's good that you have that mindset going into it and feeling like a finish is on the horizon with that. But going into this fight, this also makes this camp really interesting for you, as well as your coach, Ben Rothwell, is getting ready to step back into that BKFC ring against Alan Belcher. So tell me about Ben being in camp with you. Has that changed anything for you this time around? Has it made camp any more tougher, or a little bit more edge to the camp with having him in it? And is there any wisdom that you're catching from him being able to train alongside him right at the top level like that with BKFC?
Real quick, he's fighting Todd Duffy and Alan Belcher.
Oh, that's right, Todd Duffy. I was thinking Belcher because they were going back and forth. My best fault.
Fight him, but he's fighting Todd Duffy. But yeah, I mean, in general, I feel like we kind of feed off each other, like motivation wise. Like we know we're supposed to be training. If I'm training, he sees that he wants to train, kind of thing. So it's a little more motivating being in camp with somebody else. Especially when like Ben, he's my coach, my friend. Like we're really close. And then wisdom wise, every day he's helped me and given me some knowledge that I can use, and he just really knows the game so well and guides me through this so well that I trust 100% everything he's saying. Wherever he does, I say it's just he says it, I say yes sir, and then we move on, because I have complete faith and confidence in what he's doing for me and in my career. So again, big shout out to Ben. But yeah, definitely motivating. He has a fight coming up, I have a fight coming up. It definitely helps the whole aspect around the gym.
How does that, talk to me a little bit about that? That's something that I've seen a lot through the years, not only with guys that I've trained with, but with the fighters that we've had on the show. How much more peace does that give you as you step into the cage to know that, having been in your corner, you trust that he's going to give you the right advice. You're not worried about, what you're getting in the corner, because with a guy that has that level of experience, that he knows what time it is. How much of a calming factor is that for you inside the cage?
Honestly, it might be more calming than I realized, because he's always been in my corner. I think there's been a couple fights where he wasn't in my amateur career, but even then I had like other guys that were already in UFC or close to that had that experience. But I think it's more calming than I realized, because I don't really think of it like that, but because I've never had someone in my corner that like didn't know what was going on. So I think I'm just
Thank
kind of, I
God.
guess, to say ignorant to that, like I've always had in my corner, so I don't have to worry about that. But yeah, I never thought about that. That's a good way to put it.
I mean, it's just something that goes into the game, never something to where you're like over calm by any means. But like you said,
Yeah,
I mean, being around fighting, you'll see people change coaches over and over again, even on the regional scene. And so being able to have that one resounding voice, and I mean, again, we talked about it the last time you came through. I mean, Ben, anyone that doesn't know knows that he's an OG of the game. I mean, I've been hearing about Ben since my coach was still fighting, and we're talking 2008, 2007. I mean, your coach and my coach fought each other in MMA
yeah.
back in the King of the Cage days. So, like I said, that tells you, the wealth of knowledge that you're getting it from. And again, obviously I misspoke on the opponent, but I mean, dude, he's right at the top, about to be, right next up, if not next up, for a heavyweight title shot in the BKFC as well. Talk to me about that fight he's got with Todd Duffy. I mean, Todd Duffy, I was there when he had what was it, the second or third fastest knockout that they ever had in the
Yeah.
UFC. And so for him to be coming in for bare knuckle, that's somebody who obviously is going to have the power, but Ben has the experience going into this one, already having some experience with BKFC. How do you like this fight? Do you think Ben uses the MMA clinch and those kind of things to take the advantage, or how do you see this fight playing out?
Honestly, yeah, I see Ben getting the finish. Like, nothing against Todd Duff, but like I think it's gonna be. I think Ben is too much for him. Like, yeah, I don't know if you guys seen the press conference. Ben's like looks like he's twice his size. It's like he's way bigger. But even skill set wise, I just think Ben is too much for a lot of these guys in BKFC. And like you're saying, like they clinch. Not a lot of guys can clinch. Like that's one of Ben's favorite things, and he used it really well. Obviously, his last fight, you've seen it. So like he has more tools. I feel like. And like he's just tough, big and tough, man. If he lands a shot, I think Todd definitely knows like that's game over.
Yeah, it's hard for any heavyweight to last in there with a guy like Ben Rothwell. That's for sure.
Well, because he's also durable too. I mean,
Yeah.
Ben has already proven he's not afraid to take a shot either, which makes you even more dangerous because he's willing to walk forward. And like you said, if he can get a hold of you, the clinch is really where he feels as though, he's got his best advantage. With that said, I mean, you say that we think we're going to see a finish with Todd Duffy. I mentioned the other name who's really been swirled around with Ben, and that's an eventual fight, hopefully, with Alan Belcher. What do you think on the back and forth we've seen between them two? And if that fight ever gets signed or put pen to paper, how do you see that fight going?
Yeah, obviously, I always see Ben winning the fights, right? I really believe his size, how tough he is, like his fighting style. I just feel like it's a lot. Like it's a lot to take on, like having that in front of you is not easy. I see him spar all the time, and like he goes and goes and goes. And the fact that it's 5 rounds, 2 minutes, conditioning now is not a problem for him. I mean, you seen his last fight; that was even in elevation. He was still going. So like I feel like him making the transition, especially at this point of his career, there's so many benefits, and he can really show just how good his boxing is about working, kicks, takedowns, and all that. But again, I think he's going to beat Alan Belcher too. Obviously, I think he's a little bit, obviously, Alan Belcher is a champ, so I think he's a little bit tougher than Todd Duffy, a tougher matchup. But I still see him getting the finish, probably third, fourth round.
You brought up elevation. Isn't this fight in Utah at elevation as well?
Yeah, it's not as much though as when he was in Denver. That's kind of what we're talking about. Because like in Denver, he went out a month earlier to get used to that. This time, I believe he's just gonna go out like the regular 1 week kind of thing. Because it's not as crazy as elevation as it was when he went to Denver.
Okay. Because I don't know about what venue or whatever it's being held at, but I know for the UFC when they've
That one's
held
in
events
Florida, I
there.
believe.
Is it? I thought it was Utah. I'm like
Let me
99%.
see. I'm pulling it up right now. Thought I saw that. I could be wrong on the placement.
Because I remember Dave Feldman talking about they're bringing it there because a bunch of their sponsors are there or some shit.
Yeah, because originally I think it was gonna be Florida for
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Wasn't it supposed to be Florida and they changed it because of sponsors or something like that?
Yeah.
Wasn't that the?
Because they're
either way.
Good.
I was just going to say either way. The reason why I brought it up is I know, like you said, this one being at a lesser elevation, that's definitely good for somebody like Ben Rothwell, big guy. I'm sure that takes a lot to get that type of body adapt to altitude. But that being said, I know when the UFC has ran events there, you definitely see it take a toll on some of them guys for sure.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I trained there. It was a while ago, but I trained in Denver, and like I was just warming up, and I was like breathing heavy and sweating. I'm like, what is going on? There's no way my conditioning is this bad, you know? Not even thinking, and then obviously, but yeah, it's different up there for sure.
Yeah, it is Salt Lake City, Utah. It's going to be December 2nd, which make sure you guys stay tuned because a little birdie told me that the champ, Christine Faria, might be flying through here again soon. So we'll have something to talk about with that card, as well as Michigan's own, the Mohawk, Esteban Rodriguez, is also going to be back on that card. So we've got a lot to pay attention to come BKFC. But talk to me, with you fighting on Anthony Pettis FC, as we talked about, there is you guys, as far as a regional card, man, I'm looking up and down this. You guys have got a lot of good fights on this card. I mean, the co-main event, you got Motez Askar versus Ty Johnson, 5-1 versus 12-6 guy. Good records. You've got Sergio Palacienza, I'm going to guess that's how you say that. I could have said that wrong, versus Corey Beck. But you got another 3-1 guy versus 2-2 guy. But you got a lot of experience up and down this card. I mean, they just came back from England there as well. So you got to tell me, if everything goes as planned, this fight is for an interim title fight. Is your goal, if this fight goes as you plan it, to unify the belts at flyweight in APFC next? Or what are your thoughts on with this being an interim fight?
So like before, I don't really look past this fight, like I don't want to start planning, I win the belt. Okay. Now I defend the belt. Okay. Now I'm focused on this fight, right? Just like the last time, I'm focused on this fight. This is the fight I need to win. I win this fight. Okay. Now we can kind of talk about that. But I feel like those thoughts aren't even in my head until I accomplish this goal first. Right. So if I defend the title if I actually get the real title after this or whatever, that can happen. That's the future, right? Right now I'm focused on the present, and that's Dylan Cox, right? That's my mission right now. Once that happens, then we can kind of continue and talk to see what happens after.
I mean, beyond what it means for your career and stuff, but personally, what does it mean for you right now to win a championship on a level like that in Anthony Pettis' fight organization?
Yeah, I've never fought for a title ever, amateur or pro, right? It's my first title ever.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. So this is a big deal to me, right? One, fighting as a pro for a title is like, usually if you fight for a title as a pro, most of the time, it's a big deal. But now taking up a step for APFC, like this title really means something, and I feel like as the organization grows, the belt's gonna grow with it. Meaning it's gonna have more meaning behind it,
Right.
So I really think it's a big opportunity for me. It's going to mean a lot, like I feel this is like everything I've been working for, and it's kind of my time to prove and show everybody like I'm on this level, and like it's not just me, it's my whole team, it's my friends, my family. Like, there's a lot behind this, and again, the belt is kind of just a trophy, so to speak, to like represent like we did this, just like a checkpoint, in my career for sure.
Well, and definitely, like Corey mentioned a little bit too, again, with an organization like that, you're getting, that top level competition before you're getting to the UFC, because not only, even though technically they're still considered a regional promotion, I mean, they just got back from running a show in Manchester. How many, regional promotions do you see that are going to an England, or like LFA, how we see them go to Brazil all the time and all these things? So like you've mentioned, and like we've talked about, I mean, I love the fact that they're creating a platform for a lot of the guys like you guys who are on that regional scene to get that top level exposure before you get there, where before you used to have to get 15, 20 fights on the regional scene and fight whoever they could get you for, where now you're able to be a little bit more selective and take tough fights like that because you're fighting in an organization like APFC that's going to provide you that top level competition. Speaking of top level competition, one thing that I remember from our last chat, I know you keep up on a lot of the fights just like we do. So I figured who better to ask and get his thoughts than you off of what we just saw with UFC last weekend. I was checking it out in between the bachelor party. We got Devin's getting hitched this weekend. I got to go throw on a suit and try not to bust my ass at a wedding. But in the meantime, I caught some fights in between that. What'd you think of what we saw from UFC? We saw the big win from Alex Pereira. You had Jessica Andrade shutting down Mackenzie Dern, and then you had Aspinall, kind of living up to a lot of his hype against Pavlovich, even despite being hurt.
Yeah, those last 3 fights were just crazy. Like, I thought Mackenzie Dern was gonna do a little better. Like, I knew it was a tough fight for her, obviously, but like how the commentators were saying, like her striking looked like it degressed, like it got worse somehow. And she's got to adjust something because that was obviously her ground game's really good, but if you don't have the striking and wrestling to get to the ground, that doesn't matter, So Jessica Andrade did a good job, shutting that down. And the Aspinall, that was crazy. Like, well, it was like what, 2 minutes, a minute maybe, right? Into the
60 something seconds.
Yeah, like that's insane. Especially
and the leg kick she ate too, man. Like she didn't check none of those leg kicks.
Yeah,
at all.
there's no like I don't know. It was weird. I think she was just chasing her, trying to swing and land something. There's nothing behind it.
If we're gonna talk on that one real quick, I know it got brought up by the commentary team as well, but I had seen a lot of people talking about it after the fact as well. I feel like Jason Perillo, her now former coach, was really making some significant strides in her game in all of those elements that you were talking about. Her wrestling, her ability to apply pressure and not just look like she's flailing her arms to do it. Her ability to actually kind of throw strikes when she should instead of just doing it to close the distance. I mean, I don't know what the reasoning was or whatever. I haven't really seen anything yet on that, but I mean, it definitely seems like that wasn't the best move, was to try to train yourself and kind of just work with a couple of close people in her circumstance. At least sometimes it works out great for people, but in this particular circumstance, it seemed like Perillo was really doing some great work to her game. And I think that's where all of us, because hearing both of you guys say it, we all felt like she would do a lot better than that. And I feel like it's because of that fact she didn't have the proper coaching in her corner this time.
Yeah, that could be a factor for sure. Like, yeah, I don't know the whole thing that's going on with like Jason, like what's going on with all of that. I heard them talking about it, and that's like my first time because I wasn't that deep into like watching her training, what's going on. So once they said that makes sense now, like we already know he's a really good coach. I mean, look at Chito Vera, all those guys. It's like I don't know what's going on, but if she doesn't go back to him, she's got to find somewhere or something to do to improve because that was not a good showing from her.
And I know Cheeto actually was just talking about, I forget who the interview was with. It might have been Ariel Helwani or somebody, but the Ruka gym is actually closed down now. So that could be a huge reason maybe why she's not working with them. Maybe, whatever the reasoning behind that, but not having, brick and mortar doors to walk in and out of every day, that makes it kind of tough to work with somebody sometimes.
100%.
Definitely something that's got to be, picked up for that next fight. But that said, I mean, what a win for Jessica Andrade. She had a couple of tough fights here, and then to go in against who they were basically trying to build up as one of the next stars in the female division. What do you think that this win does for Andrade next? Where do you think we see her next? Do you think she goes back towards title contention, or she's going to have to get another tough top contender next?
I think maybe one more. That was a good showing from her, obviously, but I think at least one more just kind of really solidify that. Like maybe get another finish or even anything really. But like I think one more just like now you can't deny me kind of thing. Now I do get the shot. So I think one more would be solid. Even if she does go right away, to be honest, I wouldn't be that mad about it either. I mean, again, Mackenzie Dern's her ground game obviously was. She's probably one of the best grapplers in the female division, right? But she shut her down with using her striking. So I think, again, one more would be reasonable, and then like you can't deny her kind of thing. But Yeah, I would say at least one more fight.
If I'm not mistaken, that was her coming off of a 4-fight losing streak, if I'm not mistaken. So with
I'll
that
check
being
it and
said,
tell you.
it was either 3 or 4. It was for sure, if not 4 or 3. But
Who
that
are
being
the top 10 right now in that division for females?
I'm pulling them
that's
up right now.
that's what I was just gonna say is who she was losing to though. It was mostly in her run up at 125. Now that she's
Yeah.
back down at 115, I feel like that changes the landscape for her career at the moment a little bit. But that being said, I still think she needs even possibly 2. I think, yeah, like I think the thing is with Jessica Andrade is she is such a proven commodity, and she's gonna go in there. She's gonna give it her all. She may be beaten, but she's always gonna go in there and give a fight. There's never gonna be a boring Jessica Andrade fight. So I feel like I don't I don't think her stock definitely rose a ton, but in my personal eyes, I feel like she was able to implement kind of like what we were talking about earlier. She went against somebody that's kind of well rounded and exposed the weakness that she found in the striking and just dominated in that realm. So I I feel like given other matchups against top girls, like we've seen how quick I think it was Tatiana Suarez ran through her and stuff like that, and it's like I feel like you got to still work a little bit to get back to the title shot, in my opinion.
Well, she's got work to do because I've got the top 5 pulled up. Even I don't know if this is like after they updated the rankings. Because according to what it must be. Okay, so it says because it's got a few people moved, but it's got as far as your top 5 at flyweight. Obviously, you have the champ Alexa Grasso. Number 1 contender, as they still have it now, is Valentina Shevchenko.
Well,
number 2.
This was a strawweight fight, wasn't it? She moved back down to 115, I thought.
Yeah,
they don't
115. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, there it goes. There it is. There's the updated one. So she did move up. So she's Jessica. Well, she's number 5 there too. So it's the same difference.
5.
Yeah. So she's number 5 at flyweight. She's number 5 at strawweight. But as far as strawweight goes, it's number 1 is Carla Esparza. Number 2 is Yan Xiaonan. Number 3 is Tatiana Suarez. Number 4 is Amanda Lemos. Number 5 is Jessica Andrade, and then at 25 you've got Shevchenko, Blanchfield, Manon Farrow, Caitlin Chikagian, and then Jessica Andrade.
Yeah, no, the 25ers are more stacked. I feel like the 115ers, like again, I think she gets one more. It's like the division's not that stacked to like 2 more for sure. Like 2 more you can't deny or kind of thing. Like who else is gonna fight?
I think the only fights that make sense for her at this point, just looking at the top 5 in strawweight, if I'm honest, I mean, really, if you look at who's there, I mean, the only fights that I really see that could make sense, because remember, Carla Esparza just had a kid too, so she's kind of going to be out the way for a minute. So realistically, at that point, that means she's either going to fight, unless she fights down, she's either got to fight Amanda Lemos, Tatiana Suarez, or Yan Xiaonan. To be honest, I think the fight that they'll make next, because they're both dangerous as far as like trying to come in there and bang and fight, I think I could see Andrade versus Xiaonan next.
Yeah, I like that.
I feel like because of the fact she's still 1 or potentially 2, 1 away, I feel like they're going to do what they've been doing a lot with like the contenders that are close but a couple fights away. They're going to try to give them one of these guys that they kind of like what they did with Dern, where they're like, hey, this is somebody that could potentially be somebody in the division later on. They might just be a little young now, but hey, they're a fireball. So watch out. This is still a tough matchup, and you win this one, then we'll put you in an actual title eliminator.
That's kind of why I think the Yan Xiaonan fight is kind of more the way it goes, because if you remember in her last fight, they were hyping her up to the fucking hilt, even though she lost her last fight.
They were talking before this. So now UFC Shanghai is no longer UFC Shanghai. It's now UFC Apex. But before that became a canceled event, they were originally talking about doing Xiaonan versus Wei Li out there. So
that would be a hell of a fight.
Yeah, it would be a fun fight. But that being said, I mean, that's how highly they think of Xiaonan, is that they were already willing to put her in a title bout. So,
I agree. Like I say, that's why I think for this one off Andrade, especially with Shannon having the last fight go, I just feel like a lot of these fights I think are going to boil down to the styles. And I think the UFC is a lot more interested right now in trying to put fights together, especially in the female side of things. Not that the women don't get in there and scrap, because anybody that knows anything about the MMA fights, 9 times out of 10, when the girls get in there, they're ready to scrap almost every time I watch a girls fight. But I think in 2023, like we talked about a little bit earlier, I do think, especially with the amount of fight cards that we have, I think when it comes down to those kind of things, it's going to have a lot more to do with the styles make matchups in this one. Are these fights going to matter? Are they going to be more worried about who can I put in the cage that's going to put on the most entertaining fight at the given time? Or is it going to be what's the best matchup for my division? We all know that the UFC doesn't always go with what's best for the division, and they want the best fight that's put in there. So for me, that's why, to me, that's the one that sticks out, but you could go any which way with those. Now that we've talked about the ladies, before we get to the main event, man, I just want to say for everybody that was at that bachelor party, I told y'all motherfuckers to watch out for Tom Aspinall, and everybody wanted to say, Pavlovich is a dog. This is going to be a tough fight, which I totally 100% agreed to that. I thought that was the case. But to find out that the guy didn't train for the last 2 weeks of his fight because his back's all fucked up, and then to go in there and blow through Pavlovich like that, I don't think John Jones wants to smoke with that kid if he doesn't get the Stipe fight. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, even on the 2-week notice, like I was still going for him. Like he's so athletic for a heavyweight. Man, he moves so well and he's so fast. Like I really like him. And obviously, like his opponent has a lot of power, but I was rooting for him. And then to find out that his back was in it too and he wasn't training, it's like, dude, like how can you not
imagine what he does if he's training?
Exactly.
Like, hot damn, if he does that with no training, I'm scared to see what this dude does with a full camp.
Yeah, 100%. I feel the exact same way.
I mean, like you said, just the athleticism and quickness that he has at heavyweight, man, it's just wild. Like, you've seen the 1-2 that he threw to finish the fight, and it was like his other fist wasn't even gone out of like the frame yet before he was already like landing the finishing blow. It was like the snap of his 1-2 was like, you don't see that type of stuff at heavyweight. It really was. It was just, and to have, I know it was a very quick fight, but Pavlovich landed that one serious shot leading right probably 10, 15 seconds before the finish. And to have your chin tested and then to lead into that kind of finish, it was like basically in Aspinall's first exchange, really, he was able to get him out of there. So it's crazy, man. That's heavyweight for you right there.
Yeah, the crazy part is like he was, out of shape, so to speak, not training, 2-week notice, and he still looked that fast, that agile. So like he had like a full camp, even give him 6 weeks, like that he's gonna be very, very dangerous. He's only improving.
Yeah,
okay, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say, well, with that said, I mean, now we know John Jones is out with that pec. What do you think happens? Do you think he tries to go after Stipe, or do you think if they try to tell him we just want you to unify those belts, do you think that that's a fight that John Jones takes? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I said this on the show, and I don't mean this as any slight or anything of the sort. My whole thought the minute that he came up to heavyweight was, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna win the title, I'm gonna beat Stipe, and if I beat Stipe, I'm done. Because then he would have beat arguably who most consider the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. I kind of feel like that's what was on his head. And then when he got hurt and this fight got announced between him and Pavlovich, I'm like, man, John Jones is going to have to get in there with a fucking killer regardless of who wins this fight. And to know that Aspinall went in there and was able to do that with a hurt back, man. Me personally, I don't know that John Jones takes that fight if this Stipe fight doesn't happen.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if he puts that belt down.
It's interesting. One is like, yeah, that was for sure John Jones' game plan. He beat Stipe. Like, I think he was just done, And now he's off for, let's say, a year, because it's 9-month recovery. So let's say a year. Like, is John Jones, is he going to come back for sure for that one more fight, right? Is Stipe going to wait? And then it's like, I don't think Stipe wants to fight anybody besides John Jones. So like if neither of them come back, so what's
he was pissed that they did that fight for interim title fight. He said, "How the fuck does this become an interim and I'm not in the title fight?" Which I, for one, was in the camp. The man's got a point, because I feel like Stipe Miocic is like the most shit on heavyweight of all time. Like, they talk about him as the greatest UFC heavyweight, but he never gets his rematches when he's supposed to. Like, there's never, like, I mean, I know this isn't pro wrestling where there's like guaranteed rematches and all that kind of shit, but I mean, all I'm saying is it seems like every time it comes down to Stipe will go out there and fight everybody, but he don't never get, like Izzy got the immediate rematch. You could go down the list of people who got an immediate shot after, and I feel like Stipe has always kind of got the shit end of the stick.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like they do. Like, he does all these things, like you're saying, they talk about he's the greatest, and then anytime, and like something good can happen for him, it's kind of like, oh, we're just going to go with this guy or do this instead,
I'll leave this as my last thought on the heavyweights before I get your thoughts on Yuri and Pereira. But look, man, I'm gonna put this flat out and simple. Like I said, I don't know that John Jones wants to take that fight, and like you just said, they always talk about Stipe as he's the greatest. Think about if this fight with John Jones and Stipe doesn't ever happen. The thing that makes that fight so interesting to me, and I had this thought about a few weeks ago, if John Jones and Stipe don't fight each other, that means that Stipe most likely is going to retire being the only one able to say that he beat Ngannou, he beat DC, he beat and I'm trying to think of so he's the only one that beat Ngannou and DC both, and Jones isn't going to be able to say any of that. So I feel like Jones wanted that fight with Stipe to happen, more so for the fact, because even though Jones won't acknowledge it, I think he knows if he doesn't get this win over Stipe, because now Ngannou's definitely not going back to the UFC. Yeah. So
one thing that's really surprised me is it seems like there's been a huge outcry from the fans and some of the media as well, that we should just kind of skip the Stipe fight and Tom Aspinall versus John Jones be next. And I'm glad somebody else kind of feels that way, because I feel like we've had this carrot dangled in front of us for so long now. Stipe is not exactly a young man at this rate, let's
not
get him
at all.
Let's get him while he's a
full-time firefighter and shit.
Yeah, let's get him while he's still got some meat on the bone, and let's make this matchup happen. So that I'm in love with Tom Aspinall's skill at heavyweight. I can't wait to see what he takes the division to here in a couple years, because I think he will have a long run. That being said, I still want to see that matchup first.
Yeah, I for some reason I feel like Aspinall won't mind to like let that happen.
He'd be smart to let it happen. It's a bigger fight for him when he gets the fight at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think he would mind to wait. Like the risky part obviously would be like he takes one more fight in between, because like it's a long time. Like he loses that one, then what? But like I don't think he's gonna be the guy to wait a whole year. So if he takes at least one more fight, wins that, then and then that fight does happen, and he beats John Jones or whoever wins the fight, then like he's gonna be one of the biggest names in MMA for sure after that.
If they do run a second interim fight in the span, who would you like to see in that spot?
Well, that's interesting. I would have to look at the heavyweight division. Who's the top? Who's like the top 5 right now?
I'll pull it up right now. I got it up here right now.
You got Almeida coming off that lackluster victory. Yeah. You got Blades, who I feel like is the most interesting one, just because of the fact that the injury happened with Aspinall in the Blades fight, so it's kind of unfinished business. You got
the top 5 at heavyweight is Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, Stipe Miocic is number 4. Jones is the champion, so he doesn't count.
Yeah.
So number 1 is Tom Aspinall, number 2 is Gane, number 3 is Pavlovich, number 4 is Stipe, and number 5 is Curtis Blades. I mean, to be honest, the only fight out of that top 5 that makes any sense for Tom Aspinall to take, if the name on the other side of that contract is not John Jones, would possibly be Cyril Gane. But with the way John Jones blew through him, I don't think that win has as much cachet on it if that's the way it goes anyway.
Yeah, that's.
I feel like there's time too to build up to that matchup because I feel like Cyril Gane still hasn't reached that peak in his game yet. Where I feel like Tom Aspinall is steps ahead of him in certain aspects of his game. I feel like if you let that matchup brew for a little bit longer and maybe have it happen in 2025 or some shit, I feel like we'll see a better version of that fight.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Last one I got to get you out of here on. I know you were watching it. Again, I told y'all motherfuckers this is how this fight's going to go. I think Pereira at 205 is going to be a fucking problem. I said it. You heard it here on the show. But, dude, so Pereira gets him the dub over Yuri Prochazka, gets him the belt here at light heavyweight. I'm just saying I'd like to see him and our guy Sweet Dreams mix it up here real quick. I would like to see that, but what were your thoughts on Pereira's performance, and what do you think of him saying he wants to fight Izzy again?
Initially, first thing I watch is he still looks huge at 205. It made no sense.
Huge.
How do you still look that big at 205? But no, I figured it was gonna be something like that, just because he's a sharper kickboxer. You know, like yes, you can be wild and crazy, but if you have someone in front of you that's that calm and that confident, it's like something's gonna happen. You're gonna get caught with something, you know, kind of thing. So I think obviously he had a good game plan, and like that's kind of what was at least expected on paper. You know, anything can happen in a fight, but that's kind of how I seen it playing out. And then he's fighting Izzy again. I mean, is it necessary? I don't know if he wants.
I think in Pereira's mind it is because Izzy got his rematch and he wants a rematch now that he lost, but.
Yeah, I mean, they fought so many times, and he's still up, you know? So it's like, if he wants it just for himself, I mean, go for it, you know? But, like, is it necessary for, like, you know, the fans and everybody? I don't think so, really. But, again, that's on him if he needs it mentally to get that win back. You know, he's competitive. We're all competitive, so it's like, I can see why he would want that rematch again.
With the way that the light heavyweight belt keeps changing hands so much over the last couple of years with the Glover run, the Yuri run, now Poetan's run, you had our boy Michigan man Jamal Hill's run there cut short due to injury. Do you feel like this was really solidifying who's the best at 205 for the moment?
I don't think so. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think so because, like, I feel like the belt right now just like in ran through. Like whoever's like winning in a fight right now is like the champ at light heavyweight, you know. So I feel like he won the belt, but yeah, I feel like he needs like one more, you know, big fight, big win, like again, like Jamal Hill, and like to be like, okay, now I'm the champion. It's kind of like I guess the interim, you know, so to speak, kind of thing, right now. So yeah, I think he needs like one more big win to like really say he's the champ.
I agree with both of you guys on that one because that's the old saying you always heard. I mean, that take it back to the pro wrestling side of things is something you always hear from a day. I mean, you could be a champion, but you're not really a champion until you defend that belt. Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with that 100%. That's why for me, I think the fight to make out of this, dependent upon when Jamal is able to be healed up, I think Pereira versus Jamal is the way to do that fight, especially because Jamal had to give up the title like that as well. And so since there's not anybody as like a dominant longtime champion for him to come back to, I think that's the fight to go with. But either way, dude, I mean, it's a hell of a statement for Alex Pereira. I definitely am looking forward to seeing how this plays out and goes for Yuri as well.
One more quick question while we're on that fight. How do you guys feel about that stoppage?
Yeah,
I have no problem with it, especially once Yuri didn't contest it either.
That's what I was gonna say. Like it looked early at first, but then when he didn't like complain about it, it's like, well, like he's the one in there. He's the one that felt it. He's not complaining. Then it had to be a good stoppage. So yeah, I agree with that for sure.
I posted something really critical of Mark Goddard because I feel like he's been fucking up a lot of title fights lately. But that being said, I do, looking back now that, like you said, he didn't really like go in defensive mode and stuff. But I feel like with as much as
you got to remember, he got dropped right before he started throwing the elbows. Like I didn't even notice he got dropped like that in the beginning when he first went down. Like I I didn't realize, oh shit, he went down to a knee before he started dropping the elbows.
Yeah.
I thought he was just trying to take him down. And then when you see it on the replay, he got clipped on the way in, dude. And then he landed about 6 or 8 elbows on the side of his head. And again, to me, what it boils down to is once you see that video of Yuri putting a video out himself saying that Mark Goddard made the correct stoppage, look, if the guy who's getting stopped says that that's a correct stoppage, who the fuck am I to say that it wasn't? Now, if it were something like that and the guy gets up and he's complaining like, what the fuck, I could still fight, I could still go, or whatever the case, now you've got something to talk about. But when the guy himself comes out and puts out a video and straight up says, no, Mark Goddard made the right call, I was buzzed after he dropped me, which is essentially what he said in that video. I mean, I don't have any that one I have no problem with, because if the guy who got hit is saying that he's okay with it, to me, then that was an okay stoppage. Now, if it were something like that to where he just popped back up and he said, man, you know, okay, I got clipped and it was a flash or whatever, okay, you got a leg to stand on. But the fact that Yuri is straight up come out days after the fact and said, hey, well, I think Mark Goddard did what he should have done, I don't think anybody's really got a pot to piss in on that one.
Yeah. For me, sure, you got to let them title fights go just a little longer, though. I just a hair longer. You got to let it be decisive. I understand what you're saying, Kyle, and I understand the fact that the fighter themselves said that, but it just leaves such wiggle room with.
But it also leaves areas where the devil's advocate side to that, from a fighter side of it too, is then the problem is, don't get me wrong, as a fighter, you always want to have the benefit of the doubt to be able to fight. But then if the more you do that, then you start getting into those stoppages where somebody's like, well, fuck, he should have stopped it about 5 shots sooner. When he got dropped on the way in. So you figure, okay, he lets it go another 10 seconds. And let's just say Pereira starts dropping them nasty elbows. And then he starts to go limp off the elbows. Then what? Then he's got to deal with people bitching, oh man, he was out. He should have stopped it about 6 shots earlier. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the referee's got a tough job for a reason. And again, like I said, when the fighter's not protesting it, to me, that's like the ultimate. That's kind of like the ultimate decider, because you and I could say whatever you want watching it on the other side of the TV, but if the guy inside the cage isn't still mad about it and it's days after, to me that pretty much says what it is. But that's just me. But we have kept you long enough, my man. Before we let you get out of here, let everybody know where they can check out the fight, when the fight is, where they can watch it, and if you got any last words for your opponent, let them know.
Yeah, the fight will be live on UFC Fight Pass November 19th. If you're a local, it's going to be Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right downtown. But yeah, check it out. Sunday, November 19th. And for Dylan Cox, I'm ready for a war, man. If we go all 3 rounds, otherwise, I'm getting a finish for sure, right? We're both finishers, so it's going to be an exciting fight. I think fight of the night. Let's get it.
You heard it. My man says it's championship season. It's championship season here at Knockouts and 3 Counts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like I said, I heard a rumor that there might be some really big things coming through here. I heard 5 Finger Death Punch might have to roll through Knockouts at 3 Counts soon. So until the next time and in between time, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of it yourself. Make sure you check us out on Millions. Buy a fucking shirt. I'm broke. In the meantime and in between time, peace.